Hello and welcome to Dawn Chorus Writes, a Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction and Audiofic. This is a miraculous fairy tale called Secrets Under the Moon, so I hope you're enjoying it. It's an AU version mixed in with Beauty and the Beast. Massive shout out to the artist who did the beautiful commissioned artwork in the thumbnail. Make sure you send her lots of love. All her information is listed down below. Make sure you smash that like button. Subscribe if you're not already, and share to others who might enjoy it, and I hope you do too. Chapter 16. Darkness did not take Marinette all at once. It folded around her slowly, layer by layer, as though the garden had closed its hands over her and carried her somewhere light was never meant to follow. For a moment, she could still feel the roots at her wrists and ankles, the branches dragging at her shoulders, the shadow pressed over her mouth where her final cry had torn itself free. Then, even that began to loosen, not because she had been released, but because the world holding her had changed shape. The pressure became softer and stranger, less like being buried beneath the earth and more like sinking through something that had once belonged to her. The void inside. She tried to breathe and couldn't tell if she still had lungs. There was no gravel beneath her, no ruined silk brushing against her legs, no cold night air against her cheeks, only darkness. Endless and waiting, and the awful sensation that if she drifted too far, she would forget what she had been reaching for. "Kitty," she whispered, as silent tears blended into the grime across her face. The name barely existed, and no answer came. Panic rose at once, sharper than the darkness itself, not because she was alone. Not only that, but because the last image she had of him was wrong. Cat bleeding. Cat wounded. Cat turning away from Felix and reaching for her, with blood slipping through his claws. The memory struck so hard she curled inwards around the ache, one hand pressing her chest, as though she could hold the fear inside before it broke her apart. He had been hurt because of her. He had stopped because she had called him. He had chosen her, and the curse had swallowed her anyway. Worse than that. Beneath the panic, beneath the image of his blood and the awful sound he made when Felix's blade struck him, another thought crept in, and quiet horror. He had already been hurt before the final blow. He had already been bleeding when he reached for her. How had he still been standing? How had he forced himself through the shadows at all, when every movement should have taken more from him than he had left? The thought made the darkness feel colder. "Kitty, please," she breathed, though she didn't know what she was asking. For him to answer, for him to be safe, for him not to follow her into this place if it would destroy him. For him to follow anyway because the thought of being lost without him terrified her more than anything Felix had shown her. The darkness shifted. A small light appeared ahead of her, warm and golden, not like the moonlight from the garden, but something gentler. It grew slowly, shaping itself into the walls, a counter dusted with flour, wooden stairs, and the faint scent of sugar and yeast. The bakery formed around her in pieces, not like a room appearing, but like one being remembered badly. Marinette's breath caught. The warmth of it hurt. It should have comforted her, should have made her feel safe, but all she could think of was Cat wasn't there. She looked towards the stairs, expecting her mother's voice, her father's footsteps anywhere, anything that might anger her to herself, but the room blurred at the edges and trembled whenever she tried to focus. "Maman?" she called. Her voice came back wrong, delayed and thin, as though the memory had repeated it without understanding what it meant. She reached for the counter, needing to feel something solid, but her fingers passed through it, as though it was made of mist. Pain sparked behind her eyes, sharp enough to make her gasp, and the bakery shattered before she could hold on. The next memory rose beneath her feet before she recovered. A rooftop, cool air against her cheeks, moonlight silvering the stone. This one hurt differently, deeper, so quickly and fiercely that she almost stumbled. She knew this place, not simply recognized it, but felt it inside her body, in the small pull beneath her ribs, in the way her gaze went at once to the edge of the roof as if someone had been waiting there. A figure stood in the silver light, black against the moon. Her heart lurched. "Kitty?" He turned, but the memory would not settle. One moment it was Cat, mane wild, ears angled through his hair, green eyes bright in the dark, and the next it was the young man from her dreams. Golden hair and the same eyes, the same ache, the same impossible feeling of being found. The shift made her dizzy. She took a step forward, but the memory drew back from her like a tide. "No," she whispered, pressing both hands to her head. "No, please, let me see." "You keep trying to force broken things to become whole." Felix's voice entered the memory behind her. Marinette turned sharply. He stood at the edge of the rooftop as if he belonged there, untouched by the wind, untouched by the grief, clinging to every tile and chimney. Anger rose through the fear, because even here, even in pieces of herself she barely understood, he had found a way to stand between her and the truth. "What have you done to me?" she demanded. Felix looked at her with unbearable calm, the kind that made her feel less like a person and more like a problem he had already solved. "I'm protecting you from a truth that would have destroyed you." "No," she said, though her voice shook. "You took something from me." "I took pain from you." "You took him." The words came before she fully understood them, and the rooftop trembled. Felix's expression tightened, only slightly, but she saw it. The moonlight broke apart across the tiles, silver cracking into shadow. Marinette clutched at what Cat had told her to hold on to, not the face, but the feeling. Safe, home, her kitty, not love, not yet in any neat shape she could name, not the kind of certainty songs made sound easy, but something fierce and growing and rooted so deeply inside her that losing it felt like losing breath. Felix stepped closer. "You don't love him." The words struck exactly where she was most afraid. For a moment she couldn't answer. Felix saw the hesitation and softened his voice. "That is what you are chasing, isn't it? Some fairy tale ending, a magic key. But you don't remember enough to love him. Marinette, you pity him. You trust him. You are drawn to him because the curse is failing and your mind is filling the empty spaces with longing." Her throat tightened. She wanted to deny it immediately, but the fear was already there, small and cruel. What if he was right? What if what she felt for Cat was only fragments, trying to become a whole they no longer belonged to? What if she was reaching for someone she had already lost and calling it love because the alternative hurt too much? Then she saw Cat again in her mind, Not the boy from the memories, but Cat in the garden, bleeding and shaking, claws buried into the edge of the shadow space as he held on for her. She saw the moment he had stopped himself, the moment her voice had reached him, the moment he had turned away from vengeance even though it cost him. Her fear changed shape. "I know what he is," she said quietly. Felix's eyes narrowed. Marinette lifted her head. "I saw him. I saw what the curse did to him. I saw what you pushed him to become." "Then you understand why this has to end?" "No," she said, stronger now. "I understand why you're afraid of him." The rooftop shifted beneath them, dragging her into another fragment before Felix could answer. A ballroom unfolded, blurred with gold, chandeliers dripping light, Felix's hand at her waist, a diamond necklace cold against her throat. Then the image twisted, and it was not Felix beside her, but Adrian holding a red rose. His smile gentler, his eyes warm with something that made her heart ache. Then Cat again, standing in the moonlight garden, asking her to hold on to the feeling. All of it overlapped until the pain made her knees buckle. Felix's voice slid through the distortion. "You see? It hurts because it cannot be held. Let it go." Marinette braced one hand against the floor, or what should have been the floor, and forced herself not to collapse. "No. Marinette. No!" She pushed herself upright, tears burning her eyes. "You keep saying that, like letting go would save me, but it wouldn't. It would just make me easier to keep." For the first time, Felix's calm cracked enough for anger to show. Before he could speak, something struck the edge of the memory space and the whole ballroom shuddered. Marinette froze. Another blow followed, heavier, and the gold walls split with a thin line of silver light. Her heart knew before her mind caught up. Cat! Release struck first, so fierce it nearly broke her. He had followed. He was alive, and he was still trying to reach her. Then terror rose right behind it, because if he had followed her here while wounded, if he had dragged himself into the center of the curse with blood still on his claws, then what would it cost him? "No," she whispered, trying to move through the impossible thick shadows towards the crack. "Kitty! No!" She was struck, struggling to gain traction, struggling to reach him. Felix turned sharply, shadows gathering around his hands as he tried to seal the fracture. "He cannot survive this place." The words should have stopped her. Instead, they sent fear burning through her so sharply it became action, causing Marinette to break free from the shadows and ran towards the silver light. But roots burst from the broken ballroom floor and snared her ankles, dragging her down enough that the pain shot through her knees. She cried out, clawing at them, but more branches rose, winding around her wrists and pulling her back. "Stop fighting!" Felix snapped. "You are making this worse!" "No," she grasped, twisting at the roots. "You are!" The crack widened and a paw-like hand burst through the silver fracture, claws digging into the edge of the memory space. The void. Marinette stopped breathing. Cat forced the opening wider, blood dark against the black of him. His mane falling across his face, ears pinned back, teeth bared with effort rather than rage. He looked monstrous and broken and beautiful in the most painful way, because the first thing she felt when she saw him was not fear. It was recognition. She knew him. he was her kitty. But when she saw how badly he was bleeding, it quickly turned back to fear, not for herself but for him. Fear, terror, there was too much of it. It darkened the fur along his side, slicked the paw-like hand braced against the fracture, and trembled in heavy drops before vanishing into the silver crack beneath him. His movements were wrong too, not weak in the way they should have been, but delayed, uneven, as though something invisible pulled him upright each time his body tried to fail. He should not have been able to stand. The thought landed with such terrible clarity that the rest of the void seemed to dim around him. He should not have been able to reach her at all. "Kitty!" Her voice broke around the name. His gaze found hers, and the world seemed to hold on that single thread between them. For one moment there was no Felix, no curse, no fractured memories, only Cat looking at her as though he had crossed every impossible thing in the world and would cross them again if she asked. "Marinette!" he rasped. The sound of her name nearly undid her. Hearing the pain in his voice, he was still standing because of her. He had clawed his way into the space that was trying to tear him apart. There was no triumphant in it, no grand rescue, only the awful truth that he would spend the last of himself trying to reach her. Felix moved between them, shadows curling at his feet.
"Look at him. This is what you are choosing. He can barely hold himself together."
Cat's claws flexed against the fracture. For a heartbeat, the beast surged in him again, pain and fury rising through his body, but his gaze never left Marinette.
"I'm not here for him,"
Cat said, voice rough and shaking.
"I'm here for you."
The roots tightened around her. The void began to collapse in earnest. The bakery flickered behind the ballroom, then the rooftop, then the garden, all the broken pieces of her life crashing together. Felix shouted something, but Marinette barely heard him over the pounding of her own heart. Cat reached for her. She reached back. The distance stretched cruelly between them. Felix's voice cut through it.
"Pitiful. You do all this, and yet she does not love you enough to break this."
Cat flinched. Marinette saw it, saw the wound those words made, deeper than the blade in his side, and something inside her tore open with the force of it, because he believed it. Or part of him did. The cursed, wounded, lonely part that thought she could not love what he had become. Especially after seeing the full transformation the magic forced upon him, as he held his claws at Felix's throat. But even in that moment, she still saw the man. The warm, tender-hearted man he was underneath the magic mask. Someone who... She couldn't bear to finish that thought and unlock the part of her she knew had been hidden away until now. The realization struck her hard in the heart, and that was when the fear became unbearable. Not fear of the darkness, not fear of Felix, not even fear of the memories hurting her. Fear of losing Cat before he ever understood that he was not unlovable. Fear of him slipping away while he still believing he was something she had to be saved from. But underneath that, another fear opened, colder and deeper. What if Felix was right about one thing? What if Cat truly could not survive this? Her gaze dropped to the blood again, to the way his arm shook when he held the fracture open, to the unnatural flicker of shadow and silver light pulsing beneath his wounds. It looked almost as though the curse itself had threaded through him, holding together what his body could no longer manage. Not healing him, not saving him, only refusing to let him fall until it had finished whatever cruelty it had begun. Felix saw her looking and lowered his voice.
You still don't understand what is keeping him standing.
Marinette's stomach dropped. Cat's expression changed, not with surprise, but with a pain that told her he had suspected it too. No, don't, she whispered. Felix did not smile, and somehow that made it worse.
A normal man would have died before reaching this place.
The void, or the core of the curse, seemed to tilt her beneath her. She looked at Cat again, exhaustion with trembling claws. The way his breath dragged through him as though each one had to be forced past something broken. He had known. Maybe not fully, maybe not in words, but he had known enough to come anyway. For her. Kitty, she breathed, and this time his eyes softened. She didn't know what the words she should say. Leave, stay, give in to save you. The roots pulled tighter, dragging her back another inch. No, Marinette said, but it came out too soft, buried beneath the collapsing world. Felix looked at her, Cat looked at her. She pulled against the roots with everything she had. One snapped. Pain shot through her wrist, but she barely felt it now. No, she said again, louder now. You don't get to decide what I feel.
Marinette,
Felix warned. I don't know what love is supposed to feel like when someone has stolen half of it from me, she said, her voice trembling but rising. I don't remember everything. I don't know why Adrian's name hurts. Or why looking at Cat feels like I'm standing in the doorway of a home I had forgotten. Cat went still, tears slipping down her cheeks, but she didn't look away from him. But I know what it feels like to lose him. The shadows faltered. Marinette's breath hitched, and the truth came with it, painful and bright. I can't lose you, Kitty. The void seemed to crack wider as Felix's expression went cold. Marinette dragged in a shaky breath, every word costing her, every word making the truth more real. I'm scared. I'm confused. I don't have all the pieces. But when you disappeared from me, when I thought the shadows had taken you too, something inside me broke. Not because I remembered enough, but because I felt enough. Cat's paw-like hand trembled where he reached for her. I choose you, she whispered. Not because of the past tells me to. Not because the curse says I must. I choose you because even when everything in me frightens, the thought of losing you frightens me more. The roots around her loosened, only a little but enough. Marinette surged forward, reaching with everything she had left. I choose my Kitty because even when the curse made him a beast, he still came back to me. The core split open around them as if the curse itself had weakening. Cracking at the seams, silver light poured through the cracks, not bright enough to save them, but strong enough to wound the dark. Cat lunged towards her with the last of his strength, and for one breathless second, their fingers touched. Not enough to hold, but enough to know. Then, the curse recoiled and the light vanished. The fracture snapped shut between them, tearing Cat backwards into the silver dark and Marinette deeper into the collapsing void. His name ripped from her throat, but the sound broke apart before it could reach him, swallowed by the violent closing of the curse. When the darkness surged around her, it was no longer still. It was angry, wounded, awake. And she was all alone. Thank you for listening to chapter 16. I hope you're enjoying it and you're at the edge of your seat. And I know that you're crying out at me for another cliffhanger. I promise it's getting to the juicy part now. So make sure you smash that like button, comment down below what you think of it, and make sure you subscribe so you do not miss out on any more chapters coming your way, or any other good stories and one-shots and series and everything like that, all the goodies. So I hope you are good, and I will see you next week, or if not sooner. Bye.